The moment we signed the divorce papers, my ex-husband's family was already eagerly packing to move into my $10 million Bel Air mansion. Imagine their surprise when, upon arriving at the gates, they were stopped dead in their tracks. David had arrogantly thrown the divorce decree in my face, absolutely certain he was going to toss his wife out on the street and move his entire family into the luxurious estate to live the California dream. But neither he nor his mother had the slightest idea that behind those gleaming wrought iron gates, it wasn't silk and velvet waiting for them, but a humiliating and painful trap I had personally set. I walked out of the downtown Los Angeles courthouse, just as the scorching midday sun was melting the asphalt. The heat waves rising from the pavement made the endless lines of traffic shimmering in the distance look like a mirage. Yet, strangely enough, my soul felt cool and refreshed. In my hand, I held the judge's final order. The ink barely dry. That fragile piece of paper carried the weight of 1,000 pounds. It put an end to 5 years of my life spent as a wife and daughter-in-law, years filled with humiliation and tears. I took a deep breath. Somehow, even the smell of city smog seemed pleasant today. It was the scent of freedom. I adjusted my oversized designer sunglasses, hiding the dark circles from the sleepless nights I'd spent preparing my legal strategy. Finally, I was free. Heavy footsteps behind me made me pause. Without turning around, I knew it was David. His suffocating cologne, mixed with the smell of stale cigarettes, had weighed on me for years. David pulled up beside me and leisurely lit a cigarette. He took a deep drag and blew the smoke directly into my face. His arrogance hadn't diminished a bit. He looked me up and down with a gaze devoid of any marital affection, only contempt and triumph. He smirked, his voice dripping with condescension. "Well, Vicky, look at you, glowing with that divorce decree. Let's see how long your joy lasts. Without me, without the status of a CEO's wife, do you really think you can hold on to that $10 million mansion in Bel Air?" I stayed silent, only offering a crooked smile. He still thought of me as a pretty but useless trophy wife, existing solely off his success. He had no idea that I was the one who had single-handedly carried the fortune he so proudly bragged about. Seeing my silence, David grew even bolder. He stepped closer and lowered his voice, as if doing me a grand favor. "Let me tell you something, Vicky. You're damaged goods now. Yesterday's news, without my last name and my status, you're nothing. Sooner or later, you'll come crawling back on your knees begging me to take you in. Maybe then, for old time's sake, I'll toss you a few bucks to survive. As for the house, you can keep that soulless empty box. It's all in my hands anyway." I looked him dead in the eye. My gaze was surprisingly calm. In the past, whenever he raised his voice, I would lower my head to keep the peace. But today, that submissive woman was dead. I replied evenly, enunciating every word. "David, thanks for your concern, but you really should worry about yourself. From this minute on, our paths diverge. Whether I can keep the house, how I'll live, or if I drop dead, none of that concerns you anymore." With that, I turned on my heel and walked toward my waiting Uber Black. I didn't want to waste another second of my life on this vile man. Sitting in the back of the SUV, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw David still standing there, furiously kicking the tire of his car. He truly believed he was the victor, and I was the pathetic loser thrown out onto the street. He had no idea that a massive storm was just beginning for his family. As the car pulled away, leaving the imposing courthouse and my painful past behind, I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to my lawyer, Arthur Sterling. "The divorce is official. We can initiate Plan B. Arthur." I closed my eyes and leaned back against the leather seat. Flashbacks of the days when my mother-in-law berated me, my husband despised me, my sister-in-law stole from me, and her brother burdened me with his debts played behind my eyelids like a slow-motion film. Brenda, David's mother, was an insatiably greedy woman who claimed to love her daughter-in-law but demanded cash at every opportunity. Savannah, the lazy sister-in-law, only knew how to buy designer clothes using the money earned by my blood and sweat. And Kyle, her brother, was a chronic gambler drowning in debt. They had attached themselves to me like leeches, draining my emotional and financial strength. But today, the old Victoria was gone. I was going to teach them a lesson they'd remember for the rest of their lives. A lesson about karma, something they had long forgotten. I smiled a cold, satisfied smile. The game was just beginning. While I leisurely enjoyed an iced latte in the corner of a familiar Beverly Hills cafe, a meticulously orchestrated clown show was unfolding across town. I knew David wouldn't be with them. He was currently at a rooftop bar in West Hollywood, popping champagne with his bros to celebrate his new bachelor life, leaving the manual labor of moving to his mother and brother. I didn't have to guess how that went down, though. Mrs. Higgins, their nosy neighbor, happily gossiped the entire scene to me later. Her colorful recounting allowed me to picture every detail as clearly as if I'd been there. In a cramped, noisy apartment in the San Fernando Valley, Brenda was directing the packing of her precious children's belongings. The place was in absolute chaos. Brenda, wearing a gaudy floral silk robe and fanning herself, was aggressively rushing everyone. "We are going to throw such a massive party that all of Bel Air will know who we are. Savannah, pack all the clothes and shoes. Don't leave anything behind. Even these cheap rags can be used as floor mops. I'm not leaving them for the landlord." Kyle, taping a cardboard box shut, laughed loudly. "Mom, don't worry. I've got it all planned out. The basement there is huge. I'm turning it into a man cave, setting up the best home theater system, and inviting the boys over. They're gonna be so jealous. This is where the real life begins, Ma." Savannah, touching up her lip gloss in the mirror, was daydreaming. "I'm taking the master suite with the balcony facing the city, Mom. The lighting there is perfect. I'm gonna live stream on Instagram and make TikToks. My followers are going to die of envy when they see me living in a $10 million estate." Brenda broke into a wide grin, showing teeth yellowed from cheap cigarettes. She slapped her thigh. "That house is your brother's, which means it's my house. And yours too." That Vicky got kicked to the curb. "Now that residence belongs to the Petersons, I'll be sleeping in the main guest room on the first floor, the one Vicky never even let me step foot in. Now I'll sprawl out over that entire California king bed if I want to. It's my right." Brenda's booming voice echoed through the apartment complex courtyard. Neighbors peeked out with curiosity, seeing two large moving trucks blocking the driveway. A nosy neighbor yelled out, "Brenda, where are you moving to with all this racket? Did you win the lottery or something?" Seizing the moment to stick her nose in the air, Brenda answered haughtily, "Oh, it's just too cramped to breathe in this dump, neighbors. My son David is taking us all to live with him in Bel Air. A $10 million mansion, 10,000 square feet, with a pool and botanical gardens. Starting today, we are high society. No more slumming it out here." Hearing this, eyes widened. Some sneered, some shook their heads, but a few kissed up to her, praising her good fortune. Brenda melted under the flattery, picturing herself as a future queen. They loaded the trucks with everything from tacky faux leather recliners and knockoff designer bags to half-empty bottles of cheap liquor. Brenda insisted that luxury was luxury, but saving money came first. Kyle and Savannah sweated as they hauled the junk, but smiles plastered their faces. Visions of living like royalty with maids and endless credit cards danced in their heads. They had no idea this trip wasn't leading them to paradise, but straight into an unforgettable lesson about greed and delusion. The trucks roared to life, kicking up dust. Brenda climbed into the cab with the driver and waved to the neighbors like a pageant queen. "Farewell, neighbors. Stay here and rot. I'm off to enjoy life." The convoy rolled out, carrying the Peterson trio's delusions of grandeur toward the west side of Los Angeles. Sitting in the cafe, I checked my Apple Watch. The dramatic climax was approaching. I took a sip of my coffee. The bitterness faded, leaving a sweet aftertaste. It's true in life, you eventually have to pay the toll. And today was the day I came to collect. At exactly 2 p.m., the LA summer heat was melting everything in sight. The air was so thick and stifling it was hard to breathe. The two massive moving trucks, loaded with Brenda's junk and dreams, rumbled into the elite gated community in Bel Air. The lush, manicured trees lining the streets and the extravagant estates hidden behind high walls left the trio awestruck. Kyle stuck his head out the window, his eyes wide. He was muttering, trying to calculate the net worth of the neighborhood. The truck stopped in front of the gates of Estate Hashite 6. The massive wrought iron gates stood majestically under the sun. Brenda hopped out of the truck nimbly, clutching a ring of old keys, a duplicate she had secretly made when David still lived with me. She bossed the drivers around. "Back the trucks right up to the gates. I'll open them now, and you can pull straight into the driveway so we don't have to carry things too far." With the air of a general conquering a fortress, she marched up to the pedestrian gate. She picked the largest key and tried to jam it into the lock. Strangely, the key wouldn't go in. She twisted it, pushed it, and shoved with such force the metal bent, but the door wouldn't budge. Weird. What's wrong with this lock today? Brenda muttered, sweat beading on her forehead. Savannah, standing nearby fanning herself with a magazine, whined. Mom, hurry up! This heat is unbearable. Did you grab the wrong key? What do you mean, the wrong key? I guard this key with my life. How could I mix it up? Maybe it's rusted. Kyle jumped out of his car, impatiently pushing his mother aside. Ma, step back! What do you know about this? He grabbed the keys, ready to use brute force, but when he looked closely at the lock, he froze. Where the traditional deadbolt used to be, there was now a sleek, black, glowing digital panel, modern, cold, and entirely keyless. It was a state-of-the-art biometric smart lock with facial recognition and a fingerprint scanner, which I had installed that very morning right after court. Mom, we have a problem. That bitch Vicky changed the locks, Kyle yelled, his voice cracking with rage. Hearing this, Brenda jumped as if she'd been stung by a wasp. She ran to the panel and started pounding on it with her fists. How dare she change the locks? In my son's house? Open up! Open up immediately. In response, the metal block only emitted a sharp, high-pitched beep the system error sound. The gates remained firmly shut, coldly rejecting the uninvited guests. The heat, combined with the crushing disappointment, made Brenda's blood boil. She lost control. She threw the keys on the ground, grabbed the wrought iron bars with both hands, and started shaking the gate. Vicky, come out! Why are you hiding like a rat? Open this door! This house belongs to my David. You have no right to keep me out. Brenda's screeching shattered the tranquility of the ultra-wealthy neighborhood. Savannah, seeing her mother's fury, joined in. She took off her Louboutin heel and started banging it against the metal bars. Vicky, don't be so cruel. You're divorced. Give the house back to my brother. Trespassing on private property is a felony, you know. The moving truck drivers watched the scene, shaking their heads. One lit a cigarette and yelled, Hey lady, are we going in or what? Tell us what the plan is. The meter is running. And in this heat, it ain't cheap. Hearing about money, Brenda grew even more frantic. She whipped around and screamed at the driver. Just wait. As soon as I get in, I'll double your pay. Now shut up and let me deal with this gold digger. Brenda turned back to the gates. This time, she didn't just shake them. She started picking up decorative landscaping rocks from the curb and chucking them into the courtyard, screaming the filthiest profanities she could muster. Her dreams of lounging in an air-conditioned mansion had evaporated, replaced by the fury of someone who just had a steak snatched from their plate. The commotion outside Estate Hashite 6 quickly drew attention. In a neighborhood where privacy and silence were paramount, the Peterson family's behavior was like setting off a bomb in a library. A private neighborhood security patrol vehicle rolled up slowly. Two guards in crisp uniforms stepped out. The younger one approached Brenda and spoke politely but firmly. Ma'am, this is a private residential area. We require you to keep the noise down. If you have a dispute, please handle it civilly or contact law enforcement, but you cannot scream and throw rocks. You're disturbing the residents. Brenda, running purely on adrenaline, saw the security guard as a target to vent her rage. She put her hands on her hips and got in his face, spitting as she spoke. Who do you think you are lecturing me? I am the mother of the owner of this house. I'm moving into my own home. What business is it of yours, you glorified mall cop? Back off. The guard frowned, keeping his composure in the face of her trashiness. Ma'am, I am asking you nicely. We are doing our job to maintain order. The homeowner, Miss Victoria, is either not home or does not wish to grant you access. You cannot vandalize property or disturb the peace. Seeing his mother being disrespected, Kyle puffed out his chest, rolled up his sleeves to show off his tribal tattoos, and shoved the guard. Bro, you looking for a problem? I'm the owner's brother. My house, my rules. I'll scream if I want, I'll smash things if I want. Touch me, and I'll have you fired tomorrow. The guard took a step back to keep his balance and immediately reached for the radio on his shoulder. His voice turned icy. Step back immediately. If you assault security personnel again, we will detain you and call the LAPD. Realizing Kyle's aggression was backfiring, Brenda instantly switched tactics. Dropping the tough guy act, she suddenly collapsed onto the concrete sidewalk, thrashing around like a fish out of water. She began wailing at the top of her lungs. I know my rights. I am a senior citizen and you are assaulting me. I want your badge number right now. I'm calling my lawyer and I'm suing you and this entire neighborhood for harassment. I raised a son, his wife stole his house, and now she hired goons to beat me half to death. Savannah, seeing her mother masterfully acting out her Karen routine, quickly whipped out her iPhone and started a live stream on Instagram. Oh my God, you guys, please share this. Look at how these rent-a-cops are abusing normal people. My mom passed out. My psychotic ex-sister-in-law, Vicky, stole our property and hired a hit squad to beat up my mom. This is insane. This absolute circus only drew disgusted looks from the respectable neighbors walking their purebred dogs. Several women crossed the street, pinching their noses, whispering to each other. Who has the misfortune of being related to them? I heard it's Victoria's ex-in-laws. She's such a lovely woman. How did she end up with them? Trash always shows its true colors. Look at how they behave. Ignoring the scornful glances, Brenda kept rolling on the ground, her silk robe covered in dust, her hair a bird's nest. She thought that if she made a big enough scene and publicly shamed me, I would cave and open the door. She was dead wrong. I had never been afraid of losing face over her family's toxic drama. Today, I was going to rip off their masks in front of everyone. I watched the entire spectacle live via the security cameras linked to my phone, sitting comfortably in the cool AC of the cafe. Watching my former mother-in-law's Oscar-worthy performance, I only felt amusement, no fear, no stress. Human audacity truly knows no bounds. Seeing the situation escalating, the security guard pressed his radio button. Dispatch. Requesting LAPD backup at Estate 86. Disturbance of the peace, trespassing, and assault on a guard. Code dry. It took less than 10 minutes for the wail of police sirens to cut through Brenda's theatrical screams. A black and white LAPD Explorer slammed on its brakes next to the crowd. 3 uniformed officers stepped out, radiating authority. Leading them was Sergeant Miller, a no-nonsense veteran known for his zero-tolerance policy in the hills. He scanned the scene. Brenda moaning on the concrete. Kyle standing there with his chest puffed out, red-faced. Savannah still shoving her phone in everyone's faces. And the 2 guards holding the perimeter. What exactly is going on here? Sergeant Miller demanded, his voice booming. Seeing the police, Brenda found miraculous strength. She popped up off the ground faster than an Olympic gymnast and stormed right up to Sergeant Miller, pointing a shaking finger in his face and sobbing fake tears. Officer, you have to save us! The injustice! My son bought this house with his own blood, sweat, and tears, and his ex-wife scammed him out of it. She changed the locks, left us in the heat, and told these thugs to beat up an old lady. Sergeant Miller firmly but gently detached her grip, stepping back to maintain distance. Ma'am, calm down, take a breath, and step back. Do not grab my uniform. There are surveillance cameras everywhere on this street. We will pull the footage and see exactly who assaulted who. Do not make false accusations. Hearing the word cameras, Kyle deflated slightly and took a step back, but Brenda doubled down. What cameras? They're her cameras. She'll just doctor the footage. You need to believe us. The working-class people. I want to go into my son's house. Make her open the door. Sergeant Miller turned to the security guard. Give me the rundown. The guard reported clearly. Sergeant, these individuals arrived in 2 moving trucks, attempted to force entry. When that failed, they caused a disturbance, yelling, throwing rocks onto the property. When we intervened, the male subject shoved me, and the older female feigned a medical episode. The homeowner, Miss Victoria, is not responding. Miller nodded and turned to the Peterson family, his tone turning into steel. I need everyone's IDs right now. More importantly, you claim this is your son's house. Do you have the deed, proof of ownership, or documentation proving you legally reside at this address? Brenda froze. I had always handled all the paperwork. David never even looked at a mortgage statement. Furthermore, Brenda and her kids' official addresses were listed at their crappy apartment in the valley. Well, it's my son's house. I'm his mother. Obviously, I have the right to enter. Why do you need paper? I know my rights. I'm his mother. Family trumps your stupid paperwork. She tried to weave her way out of it. Ma'am, we operate on the law. Without documentation, your actions constitute trespassing and disturbing the peace. I am ordering you to pack up your trucks and disperse immediately. If you continue to cause a scene, everyone is going downtown in handcuffs. Kyle, realizing they were outmatched, changed his tone, trying to play it cool. Hey, come on, officer, have a heart. My mom's old. She gets confused. But this really is my brother David's house. They're getting a divorce. And this crazy lady changed the locks illegally. We're family. Just let us in to wait for David. He'll be here soon to sort it out. I don't have a heart when it comes to the law. Miller cut him off. Dividing assets in a divorce is a civil matter for the courts. Until a judge rules otherwise, or the current legal occupant gives permission, you cannot force your way in. At that exact high-tension moment, when Brenda was gearing up for Act 2 of her breakdown, a sleek black Cadillac Escalade pulled up next to the police cruiser. The rear door opened, and a designer stiletto stepped onto the pavement. It was me. I stepped out of the SUV, dressed in a sharp, tailored navy blue power suit, holding a thick manila folder. I took off my sunglasses and stared directly at the chaotic mob. My sharp gaze swept over the stunned faces of Brenda, Savannah, and Kyle. I smiled politely but walked with pure authority straight toward Sergeant Miller. Good afternoon, officers. I am Victoria Peterson, the sole legal owner of this property. Is there a problem? Why is there a mob outside my gate? Brenda, seeing me, reacted as if she'd seen the devil. She pointed a shaking finger at me and shrieked. There she is! The snake! Officer, order her to open the gates. Are you really trying to steal my son's house? I didn't even dignify her with a glance. I calmly handed the folder to Sergeant Miller. Sergeant, here is the grant deed to the property in my name alone, as well as a notarized prenuptial agreement stipulating that this is my separate premarital asset. And here is the final divorce decree signed by the judge, which went into effect 3 days ago. This property belongs 100% to me and has absolutely no legal connection to David Peterson or his family. Sergeant Miller glanced at the thick folder, then raised a hand to stop me. I'm not a family court judge, ma'am, and I don't litigate prenups on the sidewalk. He turned to the Petersons, his voice hardening. However, she has the keys, the security codes, and her ID matches this address. That establishes legal residency. This is a civil matter. If you want to dispute ownership, take it to court. But right here, right now, she has the right to deny entry. If any of you step foot past those gates, I'm arresting you for trespassing. The sergeant's words struck like lightning. Brenda's face drained of color, turning from bright red to a sickly pale white. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Kyle and Savannah exchanged panicked looks. Their dream of living the Beverly Hills lifestyle had just been brutally executed. However, Brenda wasn't going to surrender that easily. She snapped back, yelling, "That's impossible! Officer, check it again! This witch probably forged it. My son is a CEO. He makes millions. There is no way he doesn't own half of this massive estate. She's a fraud. She scammed us." I laughed out loud at her pure audacity. I looked her dead in the eye and spoke in a cold, deadly calm voice. Brenda, let's refresh your memory. 5 years ago, when I married David, he was a low-level desk clerk drowning in credit card debt. He owed bookies thousands from his gambling habits. The money to clear his debts came from my accounts. The seed money to start his company came from my accounts. I bought this house outright with the trust fund my parents left me. Everything is notarized, filed with the county, and your precious son signed the prenup with his own hand. Would you like to see his signature? Brenda was silenced. She knew perfectly well what her son's past was, but her entitlement had blinded her to reality. She looked pleadingly at Kyle, but he just stared at his shoes, kicking the dirt. Sergeant Miller intervened, his voice leaving zero room for debate. Ma'am, this is my final warning. If you dispute the ownership, take it up in civil court. But right here, right now, in the eyes of the law, Victoria is the owner. Your actions gathering a mob, disturbing the peace, and attempting to breach a private residence are illegal. I am ordering you to leave immediately. If you don't, I will arrest all 3 of you for trespassing and public disturbance. The crowd of onlookers started murmuring, throwing shade at the Petersons. Imagine pulling up in U-Hauls to steal your ex-daughter-in-law's house. Old and crazy. Greed makes people psychotic. Good for Victoria. Put up with them for years and finally dropped the hammer. The whispers pierced Brenda's fragile ego like needles. She looked around, realizing she had 0 allies and that the LAPD was not playing around. She knew she couldn't win with tantrums, but she refused to leave empty-handed. Her eyes darted around, looking for a new angle, and she found it. Brenda straightened up, dusted off her silk robe, shot me a venomous look, and declared, "Fine, keep your damn house, but my son's belongings, his designer suits, his books, his electronics, his memories are all inside. I have the right to go in and pack his things. Or are you going to take the shirt off his back too, you shameless gold digger?" I raised an eyebrow. She wanted to go inside? Perfect. I had been waiting for this exact moment. If she wanted to see the inside, I'd give her the grand tour. I wanted her to experience the ultimate, soul-crushing disappointment. Before Brenda even finished speaking, Kyle and Savannah jumped in. Kyle pointed a finger at me. "Yeah, my brother lived here for years. He has tons of expensive stuff. The 100-inch 8K TV he bought. The custom surround sound system. His collection of vintage bourbon. Don't you dare try to keep it. Open the door, we're taking his stuff." Savannah chimed in with her usual bratty tone. "And the Chanel bags David bought me? You kept those in your closet. Give them back right now." I looked at the three of them and mentally smirked. They really thought the mansion looked the same as it did yesterday. They thought I was some heartbroken fool who would leave millions in assets sitting around for them to loot. I turned to Sergeant Miller, maintaining my composure. "Officer, to avoid any accusations of theft, I am perfectly willing to let them inside to inspect the premises and collect David's personal belongings. I want to be done with this family once and for all. I just ask that you and the neighbors act as witnesses." Miller nodded. "All right. If you're consenting to it, that's the easiest way to resolve this. Go in, get the belongings, and vacate the premises peacefully. I'll send one of my officers inside to supervise and ensure there's no property damage." Hearing this, Brenda's eyes lit up like a slot machine hitting the jackpot. She winked at Kyle and Savannah, her face radiating victory. They were definitely plotting to barricade themselves inside once they crossed the threshold, or, at the very least, haul out hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of luxury goods. That's more like it. "Hurry up and open the door," Brenda snapped, tapping her foot impatiently. I walked slowly up to the main gates, pulled out my iPhone, and opened my smart home app. With one tap on the screen, a futuristic click echoed from the gates. The heavy wrought iron slowly swung inward. I stepped aside and made a welcoming gesture. The smile on my face was probably the most sinister one they had ever seen. "After you, Brenda. You too, kids. Go on in, look closely. Don't miss a single corner." Ignoring my tone, the Peterson family pushed past me, sprinting up the driveway. Kyle ran point, with Savannah and Brenda waddling frantically behind him. The moving guys peered through the gates, waiting for instructions. They rushed through the manicured front gardens. I walked behind them at a leisurely pace, accompanied by a young LAPD officer. I watched their frantic greed with pure amusement. They were sprinting toward a mirage. Kyle reached the massive custom oak front doors first. He grabbed the handle and yanked it open. It was unlocked. He threw the doors wide and screamed, "We're in, Ma! We got the house! Yo, movers! Bring the dollies! We're taking the antique dining set first." Brenda, panting heavily, jogged up, grinning from ear to ear. "The TV! The TV in the living room is mine! If anyone touches it, I'll break their fingers." They stormed into the foyer with the energy of pirates boarding a treasure ship. But within seconds, their shouts died out. Suddenly, there was a deafening, eerie silence. Instead of the sounds of looting, I heard only heavy breathing and hesitant, confused footsteps. I walked up the front steps, stopped in the doorway, crossed my arms, and looked inside. Standing in the middle of the cavernous living room were three frozen statues. Their backs were tense, as if they had just seen a ghost in broad daylight. The best part of the show was just beginning. The late afternoon sun poured through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, flooding the house with light and exposing the brutal, naked truth. The sprawling living room, which used to be furnished like a spread in Architectural Digest, was completely, utterly empty. Gone was the custom Italian leather sectional Brenda loved to lounge on. Gone was the massive 100-inch curved TV. Gone was the Persian rug, the antique vases, the million-dollar art collection. Everything was gone. All that remained were stark white walls and gleaming marble floors, reflecting the devastated faces of my ex-in-laws. The house echoed with a hollow, terrifying emptiness. Brenda rubbed her eyes, genuinely believing the LA heat had given her hallucinations. She walked around the living room in a daze, touching the bare walls where expensive paintings used to hang. The stuff? Where is everything? She babbled in a panic. Kyle, refusing to believe it, sprinted into the chef's kitchen. I heard him violently yanking open cabinets and drawers. Mom! The kitchen is empty. The fridge, the smart oven, the dishwasher, she even took the damn forks and spoons. His terrified voice echoed down the hall. Meanwhile, Savannah had bolted upstairs. The clacking of her heels echoed loudly on the hardwood steps. A moment later, a blood-curdling shriek came from the second floor. Oh my God, the bedrooms are empty. The beds, the dressers, the vanities, she gutted the place. There's not even a hanger left in the closets. I stood leaning casually against the doorframe, watching Brenda. She stood dead center in the living room, pointing a trembling finger at me. You! Where did you hide it all? What did you do with my son's property? I stepped inside. The clicking of my heels on the marble sounded sharp and lethal. I looked at her and answered smoothly. You're mistaken, Brenda. Everything in this house, from the flat screen to the forks, was bought with my money, and the receipts were in my name. Since the house and everything inside it is strictly my premarital asset, I've spent the last few days secretly having a crew pack it all up and move it to a climate-controlled storage unit in Pasadena. The only things left were David's cheap suits, which I tossed by the dumpster this morning. This house is literally just 4 walls and a roof now. Hearing this, Brenda almost had a stroke. She clutched her chest and collapsed onto the cold marble floor, since there was nowhere else to sit. You psychotic bitch. What about David's things? His clothes? Oh, his old suits and the junk he left behind? I pointed toward the backyard. I stuffed it all into black, hefty trash bags and threw them by the dumpsters out back. You can go dig through them. But inside this house, there is absolutely nothing left that has anything to do with your family. Kyle stormed out of the kitchen, his face twisted in pure rage. He surveyed the empty mansion, mourning the immense wealth he thought was already his. You've got to be kidding me, he growled. You played dirty, I don't believe it. You definitely hid the cash and the gold in the wall, safe in the master bedroom. Like a rabid dog, Kyle charged up the stairs. I didn't even try to stop him. Let him look. I had purposely left the wall safe wide open. Inside, there was nothing but a thin layer of dust. A few minutes later, the trio reconvened in the living room. They looked haggard, drenched in sweat. The absolute defeat in their eyes was palpable. They had spent money on trucks, caused a massive scene, and let their imaginations run wild, all for a big fat zero. The $10 million mansion now felt like nothing more than a giant, useless glass cavern. Brenda glared at me with pure hatred. You are truly evil. I never expected you to calculate every single move. I shrugged. I was just taking out the trash so I could start a new life. Trashy people left, so their trashy belongings had to follow. Out of sight, out of mind. Outside, it was a typical 5-degree August day in LA, but inside the hermetically sealed mansion, it was a nightmare. The massive floor-to-ceiling windows had turned the glass-enclosed house into a giant greenhouse. Without the familiar hum of the central HVAC system, the stagnant, suffocating air trapped the California sun inside. Savannah, who was used to living in constant air conditioning, was suffering the most. Her heavy makeup was melting down her face, and her silk blouse clung wetly to her back. Desperate, she ran to the powder room on the first floor to splash water on her face. She cranked the designer faucet all the way, but it only let out a dry, rattling hiss, followed by a couple of drops of murky brown water. "There's no water!" she shrieked from the bathroom. "Mom! There's no water! I'm so thirsty! I'm literally going to pass out! My skin is going to break out!" Brenda, sitting on the marble floor in a pool of her own sweat, panicked even more at her daughter's screams. She turned to me and yelled, "Vicky! What the hell are you doing? Why is there no power and no water? Are you trying to kill us?" I remained leaning against the wall, lazily fanning myself with a designer paper fan I pulled from my Birkin bag. My total zen was a stark contrast to their misery. I looked at Brenda and replied nonchalantly, "You're right, it is weird. Oh wait, I moved out. Since the house was going to be empty, I naturally shut off the water and electricity to save money and prevent any fire hazards. Yesterday, I canceled my utility accounts. And just to be safe, I had a contractor shut off the main water valve and flip the master breaker to the house. You! Brenda gasped for air, pointing a shaking finger at me. So now it's just a glass box with no power, no water, and no Wi-Fi, I continued. If you guys want to hang out and enjoy the sauna, be my guest. I don't mind. Oh, but be careful. It gets pitch black in here at night. Try not to trip and break your neck on the stairs. Hearing this, Kyle's spirit completely broke. He slumped onto the bottom stair, wiping sweat off his forehead with his sleeve. How the hell are we supposed to live here? It's 100 degrees. No water, no lights, no internet. I'd rather go back to our crappy apartment. Savannah emerged from the bathroom looking like a disaster. Her hair was frizzy and stuck to her face. Mom, I can't take this anymore, she sobbed. Let's get out of here. If I stay another minute, I'll faint. I watched them and thought, they can't even handle a minor inconvenience. Yet they wanted to hijack a mansion and play royalty. Truly, parasites who rely on a host have zero survival skills. Brenda looked around the massive house, which had become a blazing inferno. It physically pained her to leave, but the heat was literally roasting her alive. She forced herself up, trying to scrape together whatever dignity she had left. Fine, you win this round. I wasn't prepared today, so I'll let you off the hook. But don't think this is over. Tomorrow, I'll call an electrician and a plumber and get everything turned back on in my name. This is my son's house, and I'll do whatever I want with it. I smiled sweetly. Sure thing. That is, if you have the deed to prove ownership to the utility companies. And just a heads up, illegally tapping into the city grid carries massive fines and felony charges. Brenda scoffed and ordered her kids. We're leaving. It's suffocating in here. The aura of this evil woman is toxic. We'll figure out a new plan at home. They trudged toward the front door looking like defeated prisoners of war. But I wasn't going to let them off that easily. I had one final psychological blow to deliver to ensure they never dared step foot here again. As they reached the entryway, I called out, "Hold on. Before you leave, take a look at the wall." I pointed to a pristine white wall next to the door. Taped to it was a laminated piece of paper with large, bold red letters. Private property. Trespassing and vandalism strictly prohibited. Any damage, including scuff marks, will be treated as felony destruction of property and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Kyle squinted, read it out loud, and then sneered at me. Who are you trying to scare with a piece of paper? If I want to take a Sharpie to it, I will. What are you going to do about it? I walked over to the sign and pointed up at the ceiling, where a tiny red LED light blinked rhythmically on a sleek black dome. Look closer. That's a 4K, battery-operated security camera. It runs off the grid and connects directly to a 24/7 private security monitoring center. You scratch a floorboard, smudge a wall, or break a window, they hit the panic button, and the LAPD is here in 3 minutes. I will hand the footage over to the police, sue you for damages, and press criminal charges. Kyle, you know how hard it is to get a job with a felony conviction, right? Hearing about felonies and tens of thousands of dollars in damages, Kyle backed away quickly. He pulled his hands tightly to his chest, terrified to even brush against the wall. Savannah pressed herself against her mother, staring at the camera like it was a sniper. Brenda, though furious, was genuinely scared. She was incredibly cheap and couldn't bear the thought of losing a single dollar, let alone facing a lawsuit. She shot me one last murderous glare, grabbed her kids by the arms, and dragged them out. Let's go! Don't engage with this psycho. Karma's a bitch, Victoria. You'll rot in hell for this, you witch. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching them flee. I felt lighter than air. I called out after them. Thanks for the concern. I'm a big believer in karma, too. You reap what you sow. Have a safe walk to the cars. Try not to get heat stroke. Outside the gates, the drivers and movers were sitting in the shade of an oak tree, smoking. Seeing the family come out empty-handed, they looked confused. What's going on? We're not moving in? What about all the junk in the back? We driving it back? Brenda, already losing her mind, barked at them. What move? It's a dump. Take it all back to the apartment. Gary, the massive, sunburned lead driver, jumped off the bumper and blocked her path. Hold up, lady. What did you just say? You hired us this morning to haul this out here, and now you want us to haul it all the way back? How are you paying for this? We've been sitting in this heat for 2 hours. That's standby time. Round trip plus standby, that's $800. Pay up and we drive. Hearing $800, Brenda lost it. What? $800? Are you extortionists? For a trip down the 405? I don't have that kind of money. I'll give you $200. Take it and go, or I'm calling the cops. Oh, so you're trying to scam the working man? Gary took a step closer. The other 4 movers, big guys who looked like they benched small cars, surrounded the Petersons, looking incredibly menacing. I stood in the courtyard, watching the drama unfold through the bars of the gate, trying hard not to burst out laughing. It looked like Brenda was about to get another lesson this time on not messing with blue-collar workers in Los Angeles. The heat radiating off the asphalt made the tension even worse. The movers were tired, thirsty, and out of patience. Hearing they were getting lowballed for an extra trip sent them over the edge. Gary, tattoos covering his massive forearms, flicked his cigarette butt onto the street and pulled out a crumpled contract, tapping the fine print with a thick finger. Call the cops? Go ahead, Grandma. But read the contract you signed. Standby time is $200 an hour per truck. That's $400 right there, plus the return trip. Total is $800. You don't want to pay? Fine. By California law, we have the right to put a lien on your cargo. We'll drive this straight to our lockup in the valley, and you'll be paying a $1,000 storage fee just to get your cheap couches back. Credit card or Zelle, lady? Kyle, seeing his mother cornered, tried to play the tough guy. Hey bro, back off. My mom's old, don't disrespect her. We'll figure out the cash, just chill out. Gary shot Kyle a look that could melt steel. And who the hell are you? You want to pay for her? Pull out your wallet. If you ain't got the cash, shut your mouth and step back. Kyle instantly deflated. He took a step back, muttering, I was just saying be cool. Brenda looked at her cowardly son, then at the confident movers who held all the legal cards. She realized she had messed with the wrong crowd. Pale and trembling, she reached into her cleavage and pulled out a thick, worn envelope. It was her secret emergency cash stash. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped it. She counted out 8 crisp $100 bills, looking as if each one was a piece of her own flesh being ripped away. Here, $800. Take it and take the stuff back. Gary snatched the cash, checked it, and sneered. Yeah, whatever. Next time you're broke, don't rent big trucks and pretend to be rich. Cash in hand, the movers' attitudes instantly changed. They hopped into their cabs, fired up the engines, and peeled out, leaving the Peterson trio standing in a cloud of exhaust fumes on the side of the road. I watched from behind the gates, thoroughly satisfied. But the show wasn't over yet. I had left one final special surprise for my dear brother-in-law. As the moving trucks disappeared down the winding hills, the Petersons prepared to leave. Brenda was muttering curses about the movers, mourning her $800. Savannah looked like a zombie, her makeup completely ruined. Let's go, Mom. I can't take this son anymore. Let's just go back to the apartment. David said he'd come tonight and deal with Vicky. Kyle adjusted his shorts and walked exhausted toward his red Dodge Charger, which was parked inside my courtyard. When I had opened the gates earlier, he had eagerly driven it right in, claiming a prime parking spot by the door like he owned the place. He pulled out his key fob and pressed unlock. The headlights flashed. He opened the door, sat in the driver's seat, and cranked the engine, desperate for the AC. But when he hit the gas to back out, the car violently jerked and stopped dead, the rear end lifting slightly into the air. What the hell? Kyle stuck his head out the window and his jaw dropped. The rear of his Charger was securely hooked up to a massive predatory tow truck. Anticipating their trespassing, I had pre-booked the truck to wait just around the corner, and it had quietly backed into the driveway while they were busy having their meltdown inside. A burly driver in a neon vest hopped out and tapped on Kyle's window. Private property. Unauthorized parking, the driver said, handing Kyle a printed notice. The homeowner called us. You have 2 options, kid. Pay the $500, drop fee right now with a credit card, or I'm hauling this straight to our impound lot in the valley. Overnight storage is another $150. Kyle crumpled the paper, his face turning purple. He looked up at the second-floor balcony, where I was standing, arms crossed, looking down at them like a goddess of vengeance. "Vicky, get down here! What kind of sick game is this? Tell him to unhook my car," he roared. I leaned over the balcony railing, my expression utterly bored. "Kyle, you're so weird. You drove in without permission and parked illegally on private property. Pay the tow truck driver his drop fee, or pick your car up at the impound lot tomorrow. I'm busy. I have a spa appointment." With that, I turned around and walked back inside. Down in the driveway, Kyle patted his pockets. He was completely broke. Brenda had just spent her last $800 on the movers. The tow driver lost his patience. "No cash? Too bad," the driver grunted, walking back to his cab to engage the winch. "Wait! Don't touch my ride!" In a blind panic, Kyle grabbed a heavy landscaping brick from the garden border. He thought he could smash the heavy-duty steel towing chains holding his axle. He brought the brick down with all his might. A sickening crack echoed through the yard. The brick shattered, but the steel chain didn't even flinch. Instead, the hammer blow deflected, and Kyle smashed the brick directly into his own car's rear fender, leaving a massive dent and scraping the custom paint down to the bare metal. The impact also cracked his expensive alloy rim. Kyle dropped his arms, staring at the destruction he had just caused. He went ghostly white. The tow driver just laughed, shook his head at the stupidity, and drove off, towing the damaged Charger down the street. Savannah screamed, "Are you psycho? You just totaled the car and let him take it. David is going to literally kill you." Kyle collapsed onto the driveway, burying his face in his hands in absolute despair. His brute force and arrogance had proven completely useless against the law and my cold, calculated trap. As dusk fell, Brenda looked at her crying son, the busted car, and the darkening sky. She finally realized they were hopelessly trapped in a snare they had walked right into. Finally, after hours of Brenda crying on the phone, David arrived. He stumbled out of an Uber, visibly drunk and radiating fury. Seeing his family huddled pathetically outside the gate, he roared, "That bitch! How dare she treat my family like this?" He marched over to the trunk of the Dodge Charger, popped it open, and pulled out an aluminum baseball bat. He stormed up to the custom-reinforced glass front doors of the house. By this time, I had returned from my spa day and turned on every single light in the mansion. The estate glowed like a fortress. David swung the bat as hard as he could at the reinforced glass door. A deafening thwack rang out, but the security glass didn't even spiderweb. "Vicky, come out here, you rat! Face me! You think I won't level this entire house?" He screamed into the night. I stepped out onto the second-floor balcony, holding my phone up. I was live on Instagram. I had a significant following, and thousands of people were currently watching the drama unfold. I aimed the camera right at him. "Hey everyone, take a look at David Peterson, CEO of Peterson Tech. Watch how he treats his ex-wife. Here he is, drunk, trespassing, threatening me with a deadly weapon, and trying to destroy my home." Seeing the camera, David lost his mind. "Put that phone away. Turn it off, or I'll come up there and shove it down your throat. You think I'm scared of you? I am your husband. This is my house. David, we are divorced." The judge signed the decree. "You arrogantly assumed that just because you paid the utility bills for a few months, California's community property laws would magically override our ironclad prenup. You were dead wrong. You are a trespasser threatening me with a weapon on a live broadcast with 5,000 people watching. Do you really want to destroy your company's stock price and your reputation?" He froze, but the alcohol fueled his rage. He raised the bat again. "I don't give a damn. Give me my money. Give me back the $150,000 you made me sign over." Just then, a calm, authoritative voice echoed from the driveway gate. Anticipating David's violent temper, I had instructed Arthur to place a private security detail on standby down the street. And Arthur, being the shark lawyer he is, had personally shown up at 10 p.m. to deliver the kill shot. "Mr. Peterson, I highly suggest you lower the weapon unless you want to spend the next 5 years in a state penitentiary," Arthur said, flanked by 2 massive private security contractors. "Who the hell are you?" David snarled. "Her scumbag lawyer? Get off my property before I bash your head in." Arthur stepped calmly between David and the door. "I am Miss Victoria's legal counsel. Every threat you just made was recorded on 4K cameras and broadcast live to the public. If you swing that bat again, you will be charged with felony vandalism and assault with a deadly weapon. Would you like me to dial 911 right now? David slowly lowered the bat, sobering up slightly. So what, lawyer? I'll sue you guys for fraud. Arthur smiled a shark-like smile and pulled a thick folder from his leather briefcase. Excellent. We welcome your lawsuit. But first, you might want to look at this. He held up an 8x10 glossy photograph. It was a crystal-clear image of David aggressively making out with a 20-something Instagram model in the lobby of the Beverly Hills Hotel, signing the receipt for a penthouse suite. David's face drained of blood. Where did you get that? You put a PI on me. This establishes marital misconduct, Arthur said smoothly. But that's not the fun part. Look at these bank statements. Arthur flipped the page. Highlighted in bright yellow were a series of wire transfers. Wire transfers to your mother and brother. Cash withdrawals. Total hidden assets. $150,000, Arthur read aloud. These funds were illegally siphoned from joint marital accounts right before the divorce. Under California Family Code Section 1101H, regarding financial fraud, hiding marital assets, allows the judge to award my client 100% of the hidden funds, not just half. If we go to court, you will lose the entire $150,000. Your board of directors will oust you over the scandal, and you'll face perjury charges. You have two options, Mr. Peterson. Option A. You wire Miss Victoria a $75,000 settlement to cover her share and my legal fees by tomorrow, and we keep this quiet. Option B. I file the emergency motion at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. So, David, what's it going to be? David stood paralyzed. The aluminum bat slipped from his hands and clattered loudly against the pavement. He realized these were not empty threats. He had already given the money to his mother, who blew it on designer purses, and to Kyle, who gave it to his bookie. Where was he supposed to get $75,000? You backed me into a corner, he rasped, his voice trembling. I leaned over the balcony railing. Nobody backed you into a corner, David. I'm just demanding what is legally mine. You were sneaky and generous with your mistresses and your leeches, but the bill has come due. Time to pay up. You have 24 hours to decide, Arthur added. Now, take your family and vacate my client's private property immediately, or the LAPD will be here in 2 minutes. David knew he was beaten. He dropped his head, turned to his family, and barked, "Let's go. The circus is over." They trudged toward the gates in total silence, leaving the booted, damaged Charger in the driveway. Their elongated shadows under the streetlights looked pathetic and broken. I ended the live stream and let out a deep breath. Round 1 was a total victory, but I knew their greed wouldn't let it end there. Savannah, the sneaky sister-in-law, was especially dangerous and hadn't made her move yet. Their quiet retreat was just the calm before the storm. After thanking Arthur and seeing him out, I armed the estate's security system to maximum. Sitting in the living room watching the camera feeds, I waited. Somewhere in a dingy late-night diner, the Petersons were plotting. I didn't need to be there to know what happened next. The details from Savannah's police report the following day painted a very clear picture. David was sitting in a booth, head in his hands, completely broken. Brenda was crying over the millions she'd lost. Only Kyle and Savannah refused to give up. "Damn it! That car is my life. It's my ride," Kyle complained. "And the registration and title are in the glove box." Savannah got a sly look in her eyes. "That makes it easy. David is drunk and useless. I'll do it myself tonight. But how are you going to get in?" "The gates are huge," Brenda worried. "Mom, chill." I noticed the back wall of her estate backs up to a public hiking trail. There's a big oak tree right next to the wall. I can climb it and drop in. Vicky lives alone. She's probably asleep, and I bet her security system is just a bluff. I'll sneak in through the back patio, find the manual gate release inside the garage, and open the main gates. Then we can just push the car out. Kyle nodded eagerly. "Genius. You're small and fast. I'll wait on the street as the getaway driver." They severely underestimated me. At exactly 1 a.m., the monitor for the backyard camera flared to life. A dark figure dropped from the wall onto the manicured lawn. "Savannah." I smiled. The rat was in the maze. The moment her feet hit the grass, the advanced perimeter motion sensors tripped. A deafening 120 decibel alarm siren ripped through the night, and blinding LED floodlights lit up the entire backyard like a football stadium. Savannah froze in absolute terror, blinded by the light. She scrambled frantically to climb back up the wall, but her legs turned to jelly, and she collapsed onto the grass. Within 2 minutes, private armed security arrived. I hit a button to open the gates for them. I walked out onto the patio. Savannah was lying on the grass, hyperventilating. Next to her lay a pair of heavy bolt cutters. The guards immediately pinned her and zip-tied her hands. I was just looking for my lost cat. I got lost, she babbled hysterically. Looking for a cat with heavy bolt cutters? I asked dryly. Were you planning to operate on it? Seeing me, Savannah knew she was ruined. Kyle, parked a block away, heard the sirens and floored it, abandoning his sister to save his own skin. Soon, the LAPD arrived. This family again? Sergeant Miller sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. Causing a riot at 2 p.m., pulling a B&E at 1 a.m. Unbelievable. Put her in the cruiser. Savannah burst into ugly tears, begging me. Vicky, please! Sister, I won't do it again, I promise. I turned my back to her. When you were climbing my wall with bolt cutters, did you care about our sisterly bond? Tell it to the judge. They hauled her away. I watched the police cruiser disappear into the night without a single drop of pity. It was a harsh lesson, but a necessary one. The next morning, at the Beverly Hills Police Precinct, Brenda and David looked completely shattered. Brenda was clinging to the front reception desk, her legs trembling as she wept. Vicky, please, my sweet daughter. Forgive us. Have mercy on Savannah. She's young and stupid. A felony will ruin her life. Victoria, I was wrong, David rasped, his eyes bloodshot. Ask for whatever you want. Just tell the cops you're dropping the charges. My lawyer, Arthur, stood next to me and laid out the brutal reality of the justice system. Savannah's bail is set at $50,000, Arthur stated flatly. But even if you bond her out today, the felony burglary charge is already on the district attorney's desk. However, we have a proposition. If you wire $15,000 today to cover the emergency security dispatch, landscaping damage, and my retainer, my client will officially inform the DA that she is an uncooperative witness. Without the victim's testimony and cooperation, the DA will likely drop or severely reduce the charges. Pay the civil damages right now, or let your sister face 3 years in a state penitentiary. Hearing the number, Brenda gripped the counter, her face turning a sickly, ashen gray. My God! Where are we getting $15,000? This is extortion. Brenda, I said coldly. This is the price of cleaning up your daughter's mess. Pay it. Or let the justice system handle her. It's your choice. David, gritting his teeth, agreed. He spent the next few hours frantically calling friends for loans and drove to a high-end pawn shop to sell his Rolex Daytona just to scrape the cash together. When the $15,000 wire transfer hit my account, I made the call to the DA's office as promised. But David's nightmare wasn't over. He then had to empty his remaining accounts to pay a bail bondsman just to get Savannah out of holding. Hours later, Savannah was released from lockup with a GPS ankle monitor, looking terrified and smelling like a jail cell. They walked out of the police station with their heads hung low. I took that $15,000 and immediately donated it to a Los Angeles Children's Hospital. After that week, the Peterson family was entirely wiped out. Drowning in debt, they couldn't afford to live in California anymore. They bought a beat-up, rusted box truck off Craigslist to move what little they had left out of state. On their way out of LA, driving up the I-15 freeway through the desert, they were pulled over by the California Highway Patrol. License and registration, the CHP officer demanded. Your truck is severely overloaded, sitting on the axles, and the vehicle's registration expired 6 months ago. We're just moving. Cut us a break, David pleaded. Sorry, sir. This vehicle is unsafe for the road. I'm issuing a citation, and we are impounding the vehicle right now. You'll have to call a licensed towing company to move your cargo, the officer said sternly. Hearing this, David almost fainted. Brenda tried to pull her hysterical crying routine, but the highway patrol officers were completely unmoved. The tow truck arrived and hooked up the box truck. The entire family of 4 was left standing on the dusty shoulder of the interstate, surrounded by a mountain of trash bags and cheap furniture. It started to rain a rare, miserable California drizzle. Kyle, staring at his soaked belongings, his weeping mother, and his ruined brother, sat down in the mud and sobbed like a child. Their utter delusion and blatant disregard for the law had dragged them to rock bottom. 3 months later, my life had completely blossomed. I won the civil suit regarding the hidden assets. Since he refused to settle, the judge applied California Family Code 1101 and ordered David to pay me the full $150,000 as a penalty for financial fraud. To cover the massive debt and my attorney fees, David was forced to fire sale his remaining shares in the company. After paying off his lawyers and me, he was left with absolutely nothing. He and Brenda moved to a dilapidated trailer park in Nevada to live with a distant relative. Kyle had relapsed and was currently dodging violent loan sharks over new gambling debts. Savannah, with her mugshot floating around the internet, couldn't get a job in LA and ended up working the graveyard shift at a gas station in the desert. As for me, after collecting the money, I donated a large portion to a charity for battered women. With the rest, I fulfilled my lifelong dream: a luxurious, 3-month solo tour across Europe. I drank wine in Paris, rode gondolas in Venice, and ate pasta in Rome. The trip healed my soul and helped me rediscover who I was. When I returned to Los Angeles, I fully renovated the Bel Air estate. I painted the walls a warm cream, brought in chic, minimalist furniture, and planted a stunning rose garden in the backyard. Tonight, I am sitting on my terrace, sipping chamomile tea, and watching the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. A light ocean breeze flutters my silk dress. My heart is light and at peace, without a single shadow of regret regarding the past. The story of my toxic marriage and the battle for my home is over. It was a brutal lesson in karma, self-respect, and independence. I smile, silently thanking the universe for the trials I faced. Because of them, I found myself a strong, independent, and fiercely happy woman. A woman's happiness or misery is her own choice and her own fight, not a gift handed down by someone else. And I chose a very happy ending for myself.